Alright, guys, we have reached the final of the French Open in 2025. Tonight is the night before the final, at least in my time zone. It will be played in about 9 hours. I'm going to go to sleep, obviously, and then watch it. It is the final that I predicted and that most people predicted, at least when it got to the quarterfinals or the semifinals, if not even before the tournament began. I said at the beginning of the tournament, before the tournament even started, I said something like I was 90% certain that the winner of the tournament would be either Carlos Alcaraz or Jannik Sinner. And that is going to be correct. But obviously, again, that was not a bold prediction because they're the top two players in the world. They are ahead of basically everyone else at the current moment. And obviously, again, this was the final that a lot of people were expecting, so it is not any sort of bold prediction or anything like that to say that one of these two will win the tournament. Some people could even say that was almost obvious in a way. They're the two biggest and heavy favorites to win this tournament, and now one of them will win it. So Sinner, he defeated Novak Djokovic, the greatest player of all time, in straight sets in the semifinals. I thought that it would be a 5-set match, but Sinner got the job done in straight sets. Even though this was straight sets, this was actually a pretty competitive match. All of the sets were relatively close. Djokovic pushed Sinner more than anybody else in the tournament has done so far, but it was still not enough to take a set. But he almost did. In that third set, he had 2 set points in the 10th game on Sinner's serve. Two or 3 set points, but he couldn't convert them. He could have done a little better on at least one of them, but he wasn't able to do it. So he ended up losing that third set in a tiebreak, and he lost the first 2 sets 6-4, 7-5. So he lost by a final score of 6-4, 7-5, 7-6. So all of the 3 sets were actually fairly competitive sets. And especially the third set could have easily gone Djokovic's way. But Sinner is just super solid. He has been solid the entire tournament. He has been more or less destroying everybody that he has faced, except for Djokovic and Rinderknecht, however you say his name, whom he faced in the first round, whom he almost also lost a set to in the third set when he was down a double break 4-love, but still came back to win that set 7-5. So Rinderknecht, he didn't actually get destroyed against Sinner. He actually did decently, even though he still didn't take a set. And Djokovic also played Sinner pretty competitively, even though he also didn't take a set. All the other four opponents that Sinner has faced, he has basically destroyed them. He has been bageling and or breadsticking them. So Sinner has done a very good job in not losing a single set until the final. Does that mean that he will automatically win the final? No, of course not. We have seen this kind of thing happen before, where a player can look superior for the entire tournament up until the final, and then still lose the final. So no one should assume that Sinner will win just because he has not lost a set up until this point. And most people are not assuming that. So Sinner, looking at his stats in the match against Djokovic, he actually only served 51% first serves in, and that is very low, even for Sinner. But he also did 44 winners and 36 unforced errors, so he did a good job in that department. So I would say this was a solid match from Sinner. I don't think Sinner was actually super good or definitely not unbeatable in this match. Sure, in rallies where he just keeps getting everything back, he does look extremely good, which he is. He's the number one player in the world, for crying out loud. But he did not really look that imperious and that superior in this match, to be perfectly honest. I mean, if you only make half of your first serves, you will usually not look like an unbeatable player because you're giving your opponent a lot of chances at second serves, and it's not like Sinner's second serve is like his first serve. He's not like Pete Sampras, who played with almost two first serves. So in that sense, this first serve percentage wouldn't matter as much because his second serve was still so good and so big and so fast. But Sinner is not exactly like that, and 95% of the tour are not like that. Most people don't have a second serve that is as good or almost as good as their first serve. That's not a very common thing. So, Sinner, even with this low percentage of first serves, Sinner was able to win in straight sets. And Djokovic only broke his serve, I think, one time in the match. It was like one or two times, maybe only one time. Which is now an achievement for Djokovic because in the last two meetings against Sinner, last year in the Australian Open and in Shanghai, he did not generate a single breakpoint opportunity. So, when he finally did that in this match, I think it was in the second set, it was a bit of a historic achievement. I was looking at my Djokovic fan group chat, and they were like, breakpoint, breakpoint! And I was having that reaction as well. Understandably so, because the guy had not done it against Sinner in over a year. So, at least he was able to finally make a break point against Sinner and break him one time. But, of course, that was not nearly enough. Why is Sinner able to defeat Djokovic in straight sets? Djokovic, who obviously is not in his prime, he's 38 years old, but he is still playing at a high level. He is still the sixth best player in the world, and he's still making Grand Slam semifinals. So he is still playing at a very high level. He's not at his peak, he's not in his prime, but he's still Djokovic. He's still the greatest player of all time, and he's still in the semifinals. So you cannot really get to a semifinal of a Grand Slam if you are not playing pretty good tennis. That should not really happen. So why is Sinner able to defeat Djokovic in straight sets with only 51% first serves in? The answer is pretty obvious, and I've already mentioned it. It is because Sinner is the best player in the world from the baseline. Sinner is close to unbeatable from the baseline. You cannot beat Sinner by going toe-to-toe with him from the baseline. You just cannot. You need variety. That is basically the only way that you can beat Sinner, is with variety. Because if you try to go toe-to-toe with him, just trading shots from the baseline, you will lose. Because he is just so good at being consistent and hitting the ball huge and still just keeping it in. A lot of players, they hit the ball huge, but they're not super consistent. They can redline, we call it redline. They blast the ball. Yeah, hitting the ball 100 miles an hour is not anything new. Hitting the ball super fast, super hard is not new. A lot of players are capable of doing that. But Sinner is able to hit the ball huge, and it never looks like he is exerting a lot of effort in doing so. He just has such easy power somehow, even though he is still a relatively skinny guy. He's able to hit the ball so big and keep doing it consistently over and over. And to top that off, his movement, especially from side to side, is fantastic. So he's a fantastic defender. It is not easy to hit through him. And if you don't finish the point, the next thing you know, he just hits a hard shot from the corner, and then the rally goes back to neutral until he just gradually overpowers his opponent, and then he finds an opening and then he crushes them. Or they try to be aggressive and they mess up because of the pressure that he puts on with his defensive skills and with the fact that he hits the ball so hard out of the corners, and that if you are not careful and if you are not on top of your game when you are attacking him, you can easily lose the rally. And so that causes players to do a lot of unforced errors against Sinner as well. So this is why Sinner is so good. He is a beast. He's a beast now. There is no denying that. So one thing I was also noticing about this match is that Sinner was also creating angles well, with his forehand particularly. There were a lot of times where he would just be dragging Djokovic off the court with relative ease, and then Djokovic would end up being past the sidelines and so far out of position, even when Sinner was not hitting the ball super hard. Of course, he pretty much always hits the ball hard, but he wouldn't always necessarily be hitting it super hard. He would hit a shot, it would hit an angled shot, and because his weight of shot generally is so good, it drags Djokovic out of the court. And then he feels like he is forced to hit a hard shot from out of the corners, because if he hits a weak shot, he is so far out of position that obviously he is not going to be in any shape to get the next shot that Sinner hits. So Sinner will drag him out to the side, and Djokovic will he will go for broke almost. He will hit a hard shot with a lot of speed on it from the side as he's being pulled out to the court, because he feels like he has to do that. And then Sinner just stays at home, stays in the middle of the court. He takes that hard shot, he redirects it into the open court. And he doesn't try to hit that shot super hard, that shot that he redirects into the open court, because he doesn't need to. Because Djokovic is already so far out of the court, he has just tried to hit a hard shot, because that is what he feels like his best chance of winning the point, if he just catches Sinner off guard with a fast shot. But Sinner just stays there, stays composed, and just puts the ball, a normal rally ball, back into the open court. And Djokovic is toast. So that was also something that Sinner was doing very well in the match. But overall, I still think Sinner was just solid. I have described what makes Sinner so good, what makes Sinner so tough to beat in general. But everything I said, Sinner can do it better. Sinner can do it better than he was doing in this match. Or at least Sinner can serve better than he was doing in this match. He was doing those other things pretty well, as he normally does. But this was not the best Sinner can play. It is never really the best that someone can play when they serve only 51% first serves in. Because you always know that they are capable of serving higher than that. And if they served higher than that, then already it means 90% of the time that they are going to be playing better. If they are serving at a higher percentage of first serves, assuming that they are not just tapping the first serves in, which isn't super common at the pro level, you're going to play better if you get more first serves in. That is a general rule. So Sinner was just solid in this match, but a solid Sinner is still extremely difficult to beat for basically everybody on the tour except for Alcaraz, because Sinner is still a beast. Even if he is just solid, and even if he is not in his own beast mode, he is still a beast by default. So his solid maybe 60-70% mode is better than a lot of players who are trying. I shouldn't say trying, because everyone's always trying. It's still better than players who are maybe playing the best of tennis of their lives. Now, I will not say that Djokovic was playing the best tennis of his life. Of course he was not. That is almost impossible for him to do at 38 years old. But for a lot of the tour, they can play basically as well as they have ever played, and it will still maybe not be enough to beat Sinner, only playing at 60-70% of his level. That is what happens when you're a top player. That is one of the differences between top players and players who are not at the very top. And Sinner is a beast. Believe me, he's a beast. He has won 3 Grand Slams already, so of course he's a beast. Obviously, look at his record in the last year. Sinner's last season last year was an all-time great season. even though he only won 2 Grand Slams, it was an all-time great season if you really think about it. So Sinner has looked pretty good over the course of the tournament. He is obviously, as I said, he has not lost a set, and he has been destroying most of his opponents, handing out bagels and breadsticks. But I am still, look, I'm a Djokovic fan, right? So obviously I am not happy that Djokovic lost, but I'm not like super upset about it or anything like that, because I am not as upset as I would have been if this were 3, 4, 5 years ago, when Nadal was not retired and Nadal was still in the conversation for having the most Grand Slams. If something like that, if Djokovic were to lose in something like that, I would be more upset than I am right now, which now I am not even really upset. Maybe only a little bit. Because now, my expectations are not very high. And now I know that Djokovic has the most Grand Slams, and that is not going to change anytime soon. Of course, that record can be broken, but if that record is broken, it will take at least 15, 20 years, probably. It is not impossible, but basically impossible for someone to break it before then, unless they win like every single Grand Slam, like 80% of Grand Slams for the next few years. Then they're not going to break that record for at least 15 or 20 years. So I know that Djokovic is going to remain the greatest tennis player of all time for at least that time, if not more. And I know that he is going to remain above Nadal and above Federer. So everything else at this point is just a bonus. I mean, the guy is 38 years old. So it's not like I can expect him to win every single Grand Slam match against players who are in their prime, in the peak of their careers. That is not the most realistic expectation. We are used to seeing Djokovic win all the time because he is Djokovic, but at some point he has to lose. So I'm not super disappointed because everything at this point is really just a bonus. And I'm actually somewhat satisfied with the way that Djokovic played, because I think he actually put up a tough fight. I really did think so. He was the closest to taking a set against Sinner. He had set points, and he was by far the most competitive match that Sinner played in this tournament so far. That, of course, can easily change in the final, but still, up to this point, Djokovic was the toughest opponent for Sinner. And it's not like Djokovic got destroyed. No, he did not get destroyed at all. This was a very competitive match. Just because it's 3-0 doesn't mean it's an easy win. All of those 3 sets were tight, competitive sets. So I'm actually somewhat happy with the way Djokovic played this match, because he was able to keep it very competitive, even though it was straight sets. He was able to hang with Sinner at the age of 38 years old, when Sinner is in his prime. And he didn't get destroyed. He did not get destroyed at all. He really did not. So I am actually decently satisfied with how this match went down. If Djokovic were to have gotten bageled or breadsticked or something like that, I would be a little more upset. But I think he actually did a decent job, all things considered. So that was what happened in Sinner's match. In Alcaraz's match, I also predicted that Alcaraz would win, but I said that it would be in 5 sets. So Alcaraz won after Musetti actually retired in the 4th set. Musetti won the first set 6-4. Then he lost the second set 7-6. Then he lost the third set 6-love, and then he was down 2-love in the 4th set, and then he retired. I don't know exactly what his injury was, but this is not the first time that we have seen Musetti retire. So it seems that he seems a bit fragile, if you will. That seems like I don't know. He just seems like his body can break down at times. So Alcaraz, he served 58% first serves in. That is still also not that high. Obviously higher than Sinner, but still not that high. But again, both Alcaraz and Sinner are not known for hitting that many first serves in. And yet they still win most of the time because they are better than practically everybody else from the baseline. That is just how it is. And Alcaraz, he hit 35 winners and 32 unforced errors, so he did 3 more winners than unforced errors. So it's hard to take as much from the statistics of this match, of course, because it was a retirement. But I don't think that Alcaraz was at his best. Certainly not. Musetti was playing some of the best tennis I've seen him play. However, he seemed to be serving pretty well, at least in those first 2 sets. And I said that I thought Alcaraz would win in 5 sets. He easily could have lost 2 sets, easily. I mean, Musetti won the first set 6-4 and then lost the second set in a tiebreak. So that second set was extremely close. It could have gone either way. Once you get to a tiebreak, anything could happen. A few points go your way, and it's over. So Musetti could have easily taken 2 sets. But even if he took the first 2 sets, I still would have predicted him to lose. Just because of the fact that this is a horrible... Alcaraz owns him in this matchup. It is now 6-1 in the head-to-head. Alcaraz has won the last 6 meetings in a row. The last time that Musetti defeated Alcaraz was in 2022 in the final of Hamburg. That was the first meeting between the two on the ATP Tour. And since then he has lost 6 matches in a row, some on clay, some on hard courts. I don't think they have ever faced on grass, but Alcaraz would still be the favorite on grass. There is even an argument that grass is actually Alcaraz's best surface. So Alcaraz would obviously still be the favorite on grass against Musetti, and most likely win if they were to meet on that surface. So this is a huge matchup problem for Musetti. Alcaraz is, along with Djokovic. Musetti. Djokovic, I believe, is 7-1 against Musetti. 7-1. Alcaraz is 6-1. So these two players, especially, are huge matchup problems for Musetti. What is the reason for that? I will say that Musetti really likes to defend, for one thing. He can get into that defensive mode a lot. So if you have players that are good at attacking the net and finishing off the points at the net and staying composed when they are attacking, then Musetti will have big troubles with that. And Djokovic and Alcaraz are good when they are attacking. They are good at finishing the points off. Some people say, oh, Djokovic is a defensive player. But he is not. He is not actually a defensive player. He is capable of playing defense, not nearly as good as he was in his prime, of course. But he is not primarily a defensive player. He is an attacking player. He really is, and you can look at statistics that will back that up. But the thing is also that Djokovic, being the greatest tennis player of all time, he is such a versatile player that it seems like he can play almost any style. Almost any style. Not like he can do serve and volley sometimes, of course, not like every point, but almost nobody does that in this day and age. So, but Djokovic he can adjust his style to do different things on the court. He does not always play the same style. And so that is one thing I have seen, is that people cannot seem to agree on how to classify Djokovic's style of play. They're like, oh, is he an attacking baseliner? Is he an all-court player? Is he a defensive player? And people cannot seem to agree on that. And people cannot really seem to agree on types of playing styles in tennis in general. Like, they cannot seem to agree on if a person should be considered a certain type of player or another type of player. Like, you'll say, oh, that guy's a pusher. And then someone will be like, actually, that guy is a grinder because he doesn't push the ball. He hits balls that have stuff on them, and he waits for his opportunity. So he should actually be called a grinder and not a pusher. And then there will be an argument. So people will commonly argue in tennis about how a player should be classified in terms of their playing style. But I think that Djokovic is still primarily an attacking player, I will say. I don't really think of Djokovic as a defensive player. He tries to attack the ball, I think so, in my opinion. So Musetti will struggle against players who can attack effectively and finish at the net effectively. And Djokovic has gotten better at doing that, at the net in particular, in the last few years of his career. Alcaraz, he just has superior firepower. His drop shot is such a huge weapon, and he is just a beast on clay, on all surfaces, but especially on clay. And on grass, of course, but talking about Musetti, he has not played him on grass. So Alcaraz, he can hit through Musetti, even though Musetti's defense is very good. It is high tier. Alcaraz, he just has so much firepower, and he also has that drop shot. So he can blast through Musetti, and he can also mix it up with drop shots to keep Musetti honest, so that Musetti will have to look out for that and get ready to run forward, so he cannot stay super far back all the time, or he will be punished. And Alcaraz is also superior at the net. He is a fantastic volleyer, one of the best volleyers on the tour, to be honest. So that is why I will say Musetti struggles against Alcaraz, against Djokovic, against players who can finish points at the net and finish points in attack. And if you look at Musetti's record against some other players like Taylor Fritz and Alexander Zverev, Musetti, I believe, is 3-1 or 2-1 against Zverev and 3-2 against Fritz, won the last 3 meetings against Fritz. And Fritz and Zverev are not known for being very good at the net. So they will get frustrated by Musetti's defense. And if you are not good at finishing points at the net, it is very annoying to play a defensive player. Because if you stay back and you don't move forward, they will keep getting all the balls back. Because they will stay 10 feet behind the baseline all day. They can stay there forever. And they will just keep getting every single thing back. And you're like, why is this guy getting that back? Like, can you miss a shot, please? But they can stay in the back forever, and they'll just keep getting the balls back. They love doing that. So that's why, if you don't know how to finish the points at the net, you are going to have a hell of a hard time against players like Musetti, defensive players who can just keep on getting everything back. And that's why playing the net is so important in tennis. I've experienced this myself when there was one occasion when I was playing this guy, and his ground strokes were superior to mine. They were technically superior, but that is not saying much because my technique is not the best. But they were technically superior. They were harder ground strokes than mine. They were hit with more spin than mine. But the guy didn't know how to play the net. He didn't know how to play it. So I had all the time in the world to just run around in the back of the court all day, keep on slicing the stuff back, keep on lobbing the stuff back, keep on pushing all the balls back, until eventually he would miss a shot. Because he never went to the net. He didn't know how to play the net. So I'm like, this guy should be... If you look at his strokes, compared to my strokes, there's no reason why this guy should not beat me. But he doesn't know how to play the net. So I would just keep getting the balls back, and eventually he would make an error. I said, and during the point, I would be like, oh, he should really come to the net there. I would have been dead. But he just stayed back. He stayed back the entire time. And so I was able to win it was only like a half set that we played, but I was up 3 games to love. The guy never moved in. If he moved in, I would have been toast. But he just didn't move in. So that really showed me how important it is to play the net, if I didn't know that already. But anyway, I think Alcaraz was also solid. I don't think that he was at his peak. but Musetti was also playing some very good tennis. Some of the best tennis I have seen him play for the first two sets. Obviously, after that, I don't know exactly when the injury started, but he was getting destroyed in the third set, and then he retired in the fourth set. So I thought that Musetti would take two sets, which he could have. Obviously, the second set was close, and he won the first set. But again, even if he took the first two sets, I still would believe that he would lose. And I was saying this to my friends because I was actually watching some of the match with my friends live. And I said, even if Musetti wins, we turned on the match when Alcaraz was still losing. He lost the first set, and it was in the middle of the second set. And I said to my friends sitting there, and I said, even if Musetti wins the first two sets, Alcaraz will win the next three. And then Musetti, he lost the second set. And then we started watching a TV show, but I was looking at the match on the computer, like kind of at the same time, because I had connected the computer to my TV with the match to watch it via HDMI. So we turned on the TV to a show, but the computer was still there showing the match. So I was kind of checking it at the same time, and then I said, "Oh, look at that, 6-love in 15 minutes in the third set." As soon as Musetti lost the second set, and then Musetti retired in the fourth set. Sorry, I guess I shouldn't laugh at that, but you know, I knew that Musetti would not win. I was saying to my friends, I was like, it is impossible for him to win. Of course, not impossible, but considering everything, very unlikely that he would win. So we have gotten the final that a lot of people wanted. Not me, not really, because I wanted Djokovic to win, but I didn't think that he would win. I didn't predict him to win. But I am happy with this final. I think this will be an interesting final. If I were not happy with this final, then I'm not sure what kind of tennis fan I would actually be, to be honest. But yeah, what can you say? The two best players in the world. Most people like to see them play against each other for one reason or another. So I am looking forward to this final, which is now in only a few hours. The head-to-head is 7-4 to Carlos Alcaraz, and he has won the last 4 meetings in a row. The last time that Sinner won was at Beijing in 2023. And at that point, he was 4-3 in the head-to-head against Alcaraz. Since then, he is 4-7, because Alcaraz has won the last 4 in a row. On clay, the head-to-head is 2-1 to Alcaraz. They, of course, faced most recently in the Rome final, which Alcaraz won in straight sets, like I predicted that he would. Do I believe now that Sinner will take some revenge and get his first win against Alcaraz since 2023 and stop the 4-match losing streak against Alcaraz? Yes, I actually do. However, I am not super confident in this prediction. I think that this can be a battle. And a lot of people will have Alcaraz as the favorite for this match. I also had Alcaraz as my top favorite going into the tournament, as did the majority of people. And the majority of people will also now say that Alcaraz is the favorite to win this final, especially considering that he just won against Sinner in straight sets in Rome not too long ago, which was on a surface, which was also on clay, obviously, and the clay that is perhaps most similar to the clay at the French Open. So most people, I think, will predict Alcaraz to win. And I'm not saying that Alcaraz is not the favorite. I think if you consider the history, Alcaraz would have to be the favorite. But I don't think he is a huge favorite. So I'm making a bit of a bold prediction by saying that Sinner will win, but it is not super bold. I mean, it is kind of, it can't really be a super bold prediction to say that the number one tennis player in the world will win a tennis match, regardless of what level that is and who it is against. So, I think that Alcaraz is probably still the favorite, but only a slight favorite, but I am going to make a slightly bold prediction and say that Sinner will win. But I am not confident in this prediction. Of course, I think that it can go either way, obviously. And an interesting thing about this final is that both of them are actually undefeated in Grand Slam finals. I've said this before too. Alcaraz has won all 4 of his Grand Slam finals. Sinner has won all 3. So one of those streaks will end. I think that Sinner will win this match. But of course it can go either way. So people might say, why do you think Sinner will win when he has lost 4 in a row and he just lost in Rome a few weeks ago? Why do you think Sinner will win? Look, the head-to-head is 7-4 to Alcaraz. So a lot of people are now saying, oh, Alcaraz owns Sinner. He has won 4 in a row, 7-4 head-to-head, 3-0 in 2024, Alcaraz owns Sinner. But I don't really think, in my opinion, I don't think that 7-4 in a head-to-head is really owning someone. I really don't think so. I think in order for it to be considered owning, you need to have 4 more wins than the person that you are owning. And this is probably an arbitrary number, but so is 3. So is 3. So is 3 ahead. So is 7-4. So this is just my personal opinion. Just looking at 7-4, I don't think that's that bad. But if it's 8-4, for some reason something about me feels, okay, now that's kind of bad. But you can't really explain that. It is kind of arbitrary. It is just a feeling. But again, it's also just a feeling to say that 7-4 is owning. Some people could say that 6-4 is owning. That's their own feeling. That's their own opinion. You cannot disprove that or anything like that. So, just because it's 7-4, that doesn't make me think that this is one of those head-to-heads where the guy has a huge matchup problem and he basically can't win, like Musetti versus Alcaraz or Musetti versus Djokovic. 7-1, 6-1 is not the same as 7-4, right? Like, he has won 4 times. He has won multiple times against the guy. It's not like he cannot defeat him. He has defeated him on clay. He has taken him to 5 sets at the French Open here last year. He has defeated him in a Grand Slam. So it's not like the guy has like the biggest matchup problem in the world. He has a problem with Alcaraz, right? But a lot of their matches have been close. And he's won 4 times out of 11 times. So it's not like he can't beat him. He easily could have won 5 times, had a match point at the US Open in 2022. Easily could have been 6 times. No, it didn't have a match point, but 7-6 in the 3rd set of Beijing last year. Easily could have been 7 times. 5 sets at the French Open last year. 2 sets to 1 up. So these are close matches that you never know. A few points go differently. The head-to-head could still be positive for Sinner. It really could be. But Alcaraz has been more clutch in those moments. But I don't look at this head-to-head of 7-4 and look at all these matches going to 5 sets, going to 3 sets, and say Alcaraz owns Sinner. No, I don't see it that way. I really don't. And some people do, but I just don't see it like that. I see close matches. I see Sinner winning multiple times, and I see close matches. Obviously, Alcaraz has the advantage, but I don't think that this is considered an ownership. I don't think that this is really an ownership just yet. I don't think so. And also, the other thing people will say is that Alcaraz has won 4 in a row against Sinner. So they say he will keep winning now. He will now keep beating Sinner. Maybe he will, but I don't think that just because Alcaraz has won 4 times in a row against Sinner, I'm not going to conclude that Sinner will never defeat Alcaraz again. No, of course not. And I'm not saying that people are concluding that, but all I'm doing is pointing out that at some point, I think Sinner will win against Alcaraz again. I don't think that he will keep losing against Alcaraz for the rest of his career every time just because he has lost 4 in a row. By that logic, Rafael Nadal lost 6 matches in a row against Novak Djokovic in 2011. Actually, was turned into 7 matches in a row because he lost the first match that they played against each other in 2012. He also lost 6 or 7 matches in a row in another period from like 2014 to 2015 or 2013 to 2015, something like that. So should we have said in 2012 that because Nadal had lost 7 in a row that Nadal will never win again? No, of course not. And Nadal did win again eventually. And yeah, obviously Nadal did win again. Would I have automatically said Nadal will lose the 2012 Monte Carlo final because he has lost 7 matches in a row against Djokovic? No. At some point, he's probably going to win again, and he did. He destroyed Djokovic in that Monte Carlo final in 2012, even though he had lost 7 in a row. At some point, they're going to win again. So, this 4 matches in a row does not give me the biggest reason to say that Alcaraz is definitely going to win. It does not. So, I have seen sufficient evidence that Sinner can compete with Alcaraz at the French Open. Last year they went to 5 sets. So I think that can happen again this year. Look, it is hard to see Sinner losing this match in straight sets. That I do not think will happen. Sinner has not lost a set in the entire freaking tournament, for crying out loud. So for him to go down in straight sets, that is hard to see when every other player has not managed to take a single set against him. And I know I said before that we cannot assume that a player will win just because they have not lost a set. Yes, that is true. I'm not assuming that Sinner will win because he has not lost a set. I'm not assuming anything. I don't even know if Sinner will win. That's my prediction, but I think that this can go either way. But I know that it has happened where a player has won every match in straight sets in a tournament and gotten destroyed in the final. That happened in the 2019 Australian Open, where Rafael Nadal won all 6 of his matches going into the final in straight sets. And then people thought, oh, I remember watching one prediction video before that match, and it said, the 2012 Australian Open final between Djokovic and Nadal was one of the best matches ever. I think that this match can top that match. And if you know what happened in the 2019 Australian Open, it most certainly did not top that match. It maybe topped that match in terms of a stellar performance from Djokovic, but it did not top that match in terms of being a dramatic and competitive match. Obviously not. So, yes, a player can win every match in straight sets going into the final of a tournament and then still lose the final in straight sets. Yes, that can happen. But I will be a bit surprised if that does happen to Sinner. And the result in that 2019 Australian Open final, that was a bit surprising. It was not surprising that Djokovic won. Of course not. He was the number 1 player in the world, and he had not lost a set on hard courts against Nadal since 2013. So it was not surprising that Djokovic won the match, but to do it the way he did, 6-3, 6-2, 6-3, that was maybe a bit surprising. Just to see that kind of lopsided score in a Grand Slam final against when it is the top 2 players in the world, it is not some lower ranked player who has reached a final. That will be a bit surprising. So I don't think that Sinner will lose 6-3, 6-2, 6-3. If that happens, I will be surprised. I will be surprised if he loses by that much. So, just given how Sinner has looked over the course of the tournament, it is hard to see him not taking at least a set when everybody has struggled to take a set against him and no one has been able to do that. It is hard to see him getting destroyed. Yes, that happened to Nadal, but it is just hard to see that. Nadal, look, in Nadal's case, he had not won a set against Djokovic on hard courts in 5 or 6 years already at that point. That is not the case for Sinner. Sinner took Alcaraz to 5 sets at the French Open last year. It is not like Nadal played a 5-set match in the Australian Open with Djokovic in 2018. No. The last time that he even played against Djokovic before 2019 was 2012 in that epic final, where he pushed Djokovic to the absolute limit. And he could have won that match. He choked. He choked in the 5th set. He really choked. But starting from the end of 2013, Nadal didn't win a single set against Djokovic on hard courts. So that is not the case for Sinner here. It is not like Sinner has not won a set against Alcaraz on clay in 5-6 years. He took him to 5 sets last year at the French Open. If it was the case that Alcaraz was winning every single set against Sinner on clay, then maybe a result where Alcaraz wins in straight sets would not be surprising. But that is not the case. He took him to 5 sets last year. So I really think Sinner can obviously compete with Alcaraz on every surface. I really do think so. And he has won. He has defeated him on every surface. So of course he can. Of course. And their first match was 2021. So it's not like it was ancient times or anything. But yes, he's competed on every surface. He's competed with him on hard and clay relatively recently, and he has beaten him the one time they played on grass. Alcaraz has gotten much better on grass since then, but he has still beaten him in the one and only grass court meeting. Sinner has beaten Alcaraz. So I don't think that Sinner will lose in straight sets. It's hard to see him not taking at least a set against Alcaraz. And if you thinking about how Alcaraz has looked in the tournament, he has not really looked at his best for really any of the matches except for maybe the quarterfinal match against Tommy Paul, where he destroyed him 6-love, 6-1, 6-4. That was the match where Alcaraz was looked at his best in the tournament. In every other match, he has not looked at his best. Not really. Maybe the first round, but maybe he might have been more solid than at his best in that first round. He has lost sets in almost every match, in most of his matches in this tournament. I believe he has lost sets in 4 out of 6 of the matches. Lost sets in every match except for the quarterfinals against Paul and the first round against Zeppieri. So Alcaraz's level has not been as consistent as Sinner. Alcaraz has shown drops in his level in most of the matches at this tournament, and those have cost him sets. So if drops in level cost Alcaraz sets against the other players that he has faced in this tournament, then why should drops in level not cost Alcaraz sets against the best player in the world, who doesn't drop his own level more than, who is maybe the best player in the world at maintaining the same consistent level throughout a match? If Alcaraz can drop his level and lose sets against Maroshan, Zumher, Shelton, Musetti, then why can Alcaraz not drop his level against Sinner? It is hard to see Sinner not winning at least a set. And if Alcaraz loses a set to Zumher, and he loses a set to Shelton on clay. Granted, Shelton was actually playing pretty well in that match. Zoomer too was also playing well, but it is still Zoomer compared to Alcaraz. If he can lose a set against those guys, then why can he not lose 2 or 3 sets against Sinner? Those drops in level will be more costly against Sinner. And people say, oh, but Alcaraz always brings his best against Sinner. That is true. That is actually a good point. That is an interesting point. But again, I feel like at some point he is going to lose against Sinner again. At some point he is going to drop his level and not always peak against Sinner. Like, it's bound to happen eventually, you know. So I think that Sinner will be very hungry for revenge, very hungry to win the French Open, which he has not won, very hungry to tie Alcaraz in the Grand Slam race, very hungry to defeat Alcaraz for the first time since 2023, and he will not drop his level that much. And so I think that Sinner will win this final in 5 sets. But of course, this can go either way. And I will not be surprised at all if Alcaraz wins. Of course, how can I possibly be surprised if Alcaraz defeats Sinner in this final? The only results that I will be surprised by are if either of these two win in straight sets. Then I will be a bit surprised. Unless maybe they're all close sets. But even then, it will maybe be a little surprising. But anything else, Sinner in 4, Alcaraz in 4, Alcaraz in 5, Sinner in 5, it will not really be that surprising. I don't think so. But I'm going to go with Sinner to win this match in 5 sets and to go undefeated in Grand Slam finals, 4-0. Alcaraz will then be 4-1. And Sinner will then have won, amazingly, 3 out of the 4 Grand Slams. Actually, Alcaraz has already done that, but it is still a great achievement. Then Sinner will only be missing Wimbledon. And then Sinner will also have won the last 3 Grand Slams in a row. He won the US Open last year. He won the Australian Open this year. If he wins this year's French Open, if he wins the French Open tomorrow, he will have won 3 Grand Slams in a row. And then Djokovic fans are going to be getting very nervous at Wimbledon. And they're going to be hate watching this guy nonstop because they will not want Sinner to win 4 Grand Slams in a row, even if it is not in a calendar year, because that is something that is literally called the Nole Slam. For when Djokovic did that in 2015 and 2016, he won 4 Grand Slams in a row from Wimbledon 2015 to the French Open 2016. That had not been done in many years. Maybe since the 60s. And that is one of Djokovic's greatest achievements. So Djokovic fans will definitely not want Sinner to match that achievement by winning the French Open and winning Wimbledon this year. They will definitely not want that to happen. So if Sinner wins the French Open, things will get very interesting going into Wimbledon. And if Sinner were to win Wimbledon, then he would have the chance to win the calendar year Grand Slam, where he wins all 4 in the same calendar year. Australian Open, French, Wimbledon, and US Open in a row. And then he will have won 5 Grand Slams in a row, but that is almost absurd to even think about. So I'm getting very far ahead with that. I don't even know if Sinner will win. And who do I want to win? I kind of want Alcaraz to win because he is more entertaining to watch than Sinner, in my opinion. He's more dynamic, and it is. I think the match was fun because Sinner is kind of like a robot, and Alcaraz is kind of just this flashy, super talented boy wonder guy. And to see him take down this machine that Sinner is, the machine that is destroying everybody, I think is pretty fun to watch. If the machine just keeps beating Alcaraz like he's beating everybody, it's not really as cool as if the machine destroys everybody, but this one special guy is so brilliant that he loses to. I think that's kind of more cool in my opinion. So I kind of, in these matchups, I kind of favor Alcaraz in terms of who I want to win. But I don't care nearly as much as I do in a Djokovic match where I want him to win every time. If Sinner wins, I will not be that upset. What Look, the match, I mean, given that I want Alcaraz to win, right? Okay, actually no. Yeah, this final is not worth quitting watching tennis over, regardless of the result. If it was somebody like Djokovic in the final, for example, and Djokovic lost in 5 sets in the final, then that would be a reason to stop watching tennis for me. But both of these guys have won Grand Slams already, so I don't think that I'm not going to stop watching tennis, regardless of what happens in this final. So that is my prediction for the final tomorrow: is that Sinner will win in 5 sets. But regardless, it's going to be fun, and I'm looking forward to watching it in a few hours. All right, take care.